New Mexico adopts PV interconnection rules that many hope will become a guideline or a template for other states. There's a bill that's been introduced into the California state legislature to promote solar canopies or carports. And Habitat for Humanity is beginning to install solar up in Wisconsin. I'm Jay Warmke with Blue Rock Station, and this is the news from the solar industry for the week of December 12th. So let's jump on into it. Well, New Mexico has adopted guidelines that have been recommended by the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. Now, these interconnection guidelines have been part of a process that's been underway for a few years. It's got one of those torturous acronyms called BATRIES. I don't even remember what that stands for. But the idea is to set up a logical process for states to begin to connect together large solar arrays with the utility grid. Now, distributed energy resources, or DERs as they're referred to, and battery storage technology has changed significantly over recent years, but most of the connection rules still use old assumptions about how these resources enter into the grid. Also, there is a obvious conflict of interest in that the utility companies are the ones who are competing mostly with these large utility scale systems, yet they're the ones that have to approve whether or not these systems can connect to the grid. So what are the guidelines here? Primarily the guidelines are, let's look at the way these systems do work now, and let's make our priority based on real world data instead of old assumptions. So that's part of it, not to get into too much detail there. They're also mandating smart inverters be part of these installations. Now, these smart inverters will allow for the connection of much more distributed energy without having to upgrade the system. And they're also requiring that the utilities report what's going on, how they're doing, what's going on. And then there's some changes in who pays for any required upgrades that are coming on to the system. In the past, typically what happens is, let's say you want to install a large system. The utility comes back and says it's going to take $1 million in upgrading of the grid for this system to connect at this location, so the developer has to pay the entire $1 million. Well, that would be sort of like having a freeway system where it's designed to handle so many cars, but the person who wants to come on, who happens to be the car that is beyond that capacity, then has to pay the entire cost of putting another lane on the freeway. So what they're saying is, all right, let's allocate a certain amount of the application fee from everybody to continually upgrade these systems so that they can accommodate more distributed energy systems. The Midwest Renewable Energy Association, along with Habitat for Humanity, has begun to install solar on a number of homes. They've got a test project going on up in Wisconsin with 49 homes that are getting solar. It's beginning November of this year and is designed to be completed mid next year. So this is an example of solar reaching out into other areas that perhaps you might not think that it would get involved in. Senate Bill 49 has been introduced by Senator Josh Becker in California. Now, what this bill does is it promotes, through a number of incentive programs, that you begin to use parking areas as locations for solar. Now, the concept here is one of dual use. The philosophy behind this is that, okay, we need to adopt more and more solar, more and more wind to reach these renewable energy goals by certain dates, whatever those dates happen to be. Well, that's going to take a lot of land. So why don't we begin to look at dual use purposes? In fact, in most urban environments, it's estimated that 35 to 50% of the surface area in that urban environment is concrete, of which that about 40% of that is parking lots. So let's start using this area that already exists and make it an energy generation location. For example, France recently passed a law says any parking lot that has more than 80 spaces must, by law now, have solar installed on that parking lot as a solar canopy. Washington State, just in March of this year, passed similar incentives that California is looking at. So this is a trend you're going to begin to see. Not only does it provide solar energy, but it provides shaded parking. Nice thing. And as part of the growing solar and renewable energy economy, American Battery Factory, ABF, has announced that they're opening a huge battery plant near Tucson, Arizona. They're anticipating this is going to create about 1,000 jobs. It's going to be about a 2 million square foot facility, 267 acres, very large facility, and they're going to be investing about $1.2 billion. This is an example of some of the recurring fallout from the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in the mid part of this past year, which is giving incentives to American-made products that are being installed. And that's the news from the solar industry for this week. We'll see you next week.